Welcome to another episode of Active Training with Ryan. In these instructional videos, I'm going to show you how to enhance your instruction using ActivInspire. This video is about how to group objects together. Now in ActivInspire, when you want to have multiple objects moving together as one, you have the ability to group objects together. To start by grouping objects together, we're going to put two shapes on the board. Using the Shape tool, I'm going to draw a circle. And then I'm going to draw another shape so I have two objects on the board. Now whenever you want to move an object around the page, using the Select tool, you click and hold to move the object. But there is going to be times when you want the objects to move together as one. So to group objects together, using your Select tool, hover outside of a shape or the object, click and hold and drag the marquee. And as you see as I'm dragging my mouse here and I'm dragging the marquee, a shaded box is touching the two objects. When you let go, you'll notice the marquee dots are around both objects. So when I go to move the objects currently, they move together as one. And these objects are only grouped together until you click somewhere else on the page. And now the objects are, once again, are moving separately. Let's say I want to permanently group them so that when I click on the circle or the square, they move together as one. So we start by selecting the objects. So once again, I'm going to hover over the shape here. I'm going to click and hold my mouse and drag it to the side. And you'll notice the shaded box is touching the circle and it's touching the rectangle. As long as that shaded box is touching the objects, when you let go of your mouse, it'll automatically select them together. Now to permanently group the objects together, in the marquee, you'll see in the middle of the marquee buttons two green squares. Whenever you select an object with the Select tool, you'll see a marquee above the object. The marquee grouped tool will usually be grayed out, but when you use the Select tool, and you've touched two objects or selected two objects, the Group tool will now light up. So when you click on the Group tool, it's going to turn yellow. Now, whenever I go to move these objects, you'll notice the marquee grouped icon is still yellow. That tells me that these objects are now permanently grouped together. So now if I click on another object, tool, or I use another feature in the toolbar, when I use the Select tool and I go to move these objects, they stay together as one. Now to ungroup an object, you simply click on the shape or your object, and in the marquee, you'll see the grouped icon is yellow. Click on it, and now they're ungrouped. Now when you want to group objects, you can have them anywhere on the page, including on top of each other. So this time I'm going to stack my objects and I'm going to group them together as one. Now using my Select tool, I'm going to click and hold, and drag my mouse, and once again the shaded marquee is touching both the circle and the square, and I'm going to let go. And then in the Marquee tool, I'm going to click on the two green squares, which is grouped, and now the objects are permanently grouped together. I want you to take a moment, practice drawing two shapes on your board, then using the Select tool, I want you to group them together. Now that you've practiced grouping shapes together, let's practice grouping multiple objects together. So I'm going to click on my shape to duplicate it, so I have multiple shapes on the board. And I'm going to use my paint bucket to change the colors of the rectangles and the circles. Now let's say this time that I want 3 objects grouped together. I want only the rectangles grouped. Now if I try to use the select tool and I drag out the mouse, I want you to see which shapes is the shaded box touching. Right now it's currently touching the blue rectangle, the orange rectangle, the red circle, the yellow circle, and it's touching the pink rectangle. So when I let go, you see how it selected all of them. So when I want to group multiple objects together without having to group objects in the middle, I hold down the control key on the keyboard. So I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on the blue rectangle, and I'm still holding down the control key, so I'm going to click on the orange rectangle. I have not let go of my control key, I'm still pressing the button down, and I'm going to click on the pink rectangle. So by using the control key, it only selected the 3 objects, and it did not select everything on the page. So once again, if you want to only select certain objects without having to group everything or accidentally grouping everything, hold down the control key, click on the objects you want to group, and then let go of your control key. So once I've done selecting my objects, the marquee has recognized that I only want these 3 objects. From the marquee button then at the top, I'm going to click on the one grouped, change it to yellow, and then I'm going to move these around the page. Now this time I only want the circles grouped together. Now I could use the marquee tool this way, but you see what happened? It grabbed all the objects. So the easiest way to group objects together is to hold down the control key, select the objects you want to group, and then from the marquee choose the group feature. Now these objects are grouped together. Now the neat part about grouping is that when you group objects together, they stay on the layer that they originally were put on. So if I move this pink rectangle over, do you see how it goes in front of the yellow circle, but it slides underneath the red circle? Because I drew the yellow circle first, then I duplicated the rectangle that's pink, and then I duplicated the circle and changed it to red. So when you group objects together, they'll also stay on their layers here. Remember to ungroup them, click on your object, from the marquee, choose the one that's yellow, and now the objects will move independently. I want you to take a moment now and practice this with your ActivInspire. Now let's take a moment and let's practice how we would use grouping in a presentation. Now in this presentation here, I've got numbers grouped together with grouped numbers underneath the shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a number 2, drop it into the function machine, and do you see how out came the number 3? I'm going to put this one back for just a moment. I'm going to try another number, the number 6. I'm going to drag it into the machine, and it changed into the 7. What's happening is, if I keep dragging this down, do you see there's the number 6? These 2 numbers are grouped together. So what's happening is I'm moving one number down, and then it's revealing a second number here underneath. Same thing with this presentation here. I've got definitions and vocabulary words. So when I click on the vocabulary word, and I drag it down, out comes the definition. Now imagine using these in your own classroom. You could use this for pictures, for definitions, vocabulary, parts of speech, and anything in mathematics. So let's try creating one together. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my texting tool, I'm going to put two numbers at the top, and I'm going to put the numbers that it's going to change to down below. Now I'm going to group these objects together. So that way, when I move the number 2 down, it moves with the number 8. So I'm going to click on the number 2, hold down my control key on my keyboard, and click on the number 8. And then from the marquee toolbar, I'm going to click on Grouped. I'm going to do the same thing with 4 and 16, holding down the control key, click on the number 4, click on the number 16, and then in the marquee I'm going to choose Grouped. So now when I go to move these objects up and down, they move together as one. So I'm going to click on my Shape tool now, and I'm going to draw a rectangle to cover up these shapes. Now I don't want the students to be able to pick up the rectangle here and move it out of the way. So I'm going to click on my rectangle, right click, and choose Locked. Now this object is locked to the board. But when I go to move the number down, you see how it changes into the new number. Or if I go backwards, you see how it changes into the new number there. So in this presentation, it's the same thing. I type text on the top, text on the bottom, I grouped them together, and then using a Shape tool, I drew this white function machine on the top. Same thing with this presentation. I have numbers up here grouped together with numbers down below. When I move the numbers down into the function machine here, all it's doing is it's moving two numbers grouped together, just giving it the illusion that the function machine is changing the number into a new one. I want you to take a moment now and try this on your computer.